Have you ever shaken your head at the weather report?
Taking a look at today's forecast for Rideau Township, North Gore, we're looking for a daytime high of 35 degrees and an overnight low of minus 41 with clear and sunny skies. In Carsonby, it will be 3 degrees as a high this afternoon and dipping down to minus 16 overnight with scattered flurries. Pierce's Corners, we're looking at a high of 16 and a low of 8 with a chance of a hurricane. Manotick is looking at pleasant temperatures of 25 and 18 with a possible meteorite impact. Richmond, who really knows? Back over to you, Max.
See, the weather is difficult to predict accurately because patterns of the weather can change very quickly. Do you know what the definition of chaos is? Chaos is complete disorder and confusion, kind of like the weather. What would it look like if we were to turn to the story of God creating the earth and the universe? Oh, let's turn over to our Galilean bureau chief, Thomas Meritus.
And here we have a formless void. There is absolutely nothing to see here because nothing has been created yet. And wait a moment, I hear a voice in the distance. It appears to, well, it must be the voice of God at this point in history. What is he? I'm trying to try to make out what he's saying. He is saying, "Let there be light." And there is light, and it is very, very bright.
Okay, let's just move on. The creation of the world takes a while. The point here is that God speaks, and the forces of chaos and confusion are destroyed. God brings order and life into the midst of chaos. Now, did you know that one of the principal opponents to God in the Bible is chaos? There's this terrible dragon, chaos sort of creature called Leviathan in the Bible. Leviathan is actually a chaos creature that is the stuff of nightmares in ancient Semitic legends. In the Bible, we find out that God destroys Leviathan. In other words, God brings order out of chaos. God destroys chaos. So now let's look at a chart. On the left side, we have chaos. Words we can use for chaos are disorder, confusion, void, empty, desolate, a place with no light. It is obscure, a place of insecurity, a place where one falls prey to weakness. On the opposite end of the spectrum to chaos, we have God's rule. This is the place of order. The place of God also is marked by certainty, fullness. It's a life lived with love, marked by peace and joy and hope. This is a place where people are protected, cherished, restored. There is light. It's defined, sure, knowable, secure. It's a place where weakness is a strength because God works best through our weaknesses, and God is the strongest power in the universe. Well, which side would you want to live in? I gotta say that I think God's rule looks a lot more appealing. Okay, live news, folks. The Galilean bureau chief, Thomas Meritus, is on the scene. I don't know how he's done it, but he's jumped millennia and he's able to see through the pitch black. It's sometime between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Where are you, Thomas?
Thanks very much, Carolyn. It's a really, really wild night here tonight on the Sea of Galilee. Pure chaos, you could say. The weather here is absolutely frightful. The wind and the waves crashing into the shore are a sight to behold. And in fact, there appears to be a small boat that is still out on the Sea of Galilee. It did not make it back to port before the storm hit, and the waves are crashing against it. It's going to be smashed into matchstick. Wait a moment. You're not going to believe this because I don't believe it. There is what appears to be a figure walking on the water out to the boat from the shore. And the men in the boat are obviously watching him quite intently. Wait a minute, wait. One of the men is getting out of the boat in the middle of the storm. This man is going to drown. And wait, oh no, he is walking on the water. My goodness, oh, wait a minute, no, he's sinking now. He's sinking. No, okay, now the first man that was walking has reached out to him and is pulling him out of the water, and they are getting back into the boat. Looks like it was a close call out there, folks, and the storm has stopped. Back to you, Carolyn.
Well, Tom, I do happen to know a bit about what you saw because I'm in a different era here and I have read the Bible. The figure out on the water was no ghost, Thomas, it was Jesus. Now, Jesus had just spent some time alone with God. That Jesus is amazing. He keeps himself focused on God so that God's power can work through him at all times. He's living under the rule of God. And what do we know about God? God brings order out of chaos. So Jesus, as one under God's rule, can do the same thing. Jesus is also so focused on God that he just walks out onto the chaos of the sea. When Jesus enters the boat, the chaos in the wind and the waves dies down, and there is calm. The man who got out of the boat was Peter, Thomas. He actually walks on the water for a bit before he sinks. When Jesus pulls Peter up, he says in a kind and loving kind of tone, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?"
Now, when you say he doubted, do you mean he doubted that it was Jesus walking towards the boat, or he doubted that he could walk on the water?
Well, interestingly, Thomas, the word doubt was used by Jesus in the Greek, and it had a sense of vacillation. Another way of translating Jesus' words could be, "You of little faith, why did you turn from God to the chaos in the world?" Presumably, if Peter could have kept his focus exclusively on Jesus, he could have kept on walking on that water right over to Jesus.
Okay, remaining focused on God, remaining focused on Jesus. Okay, I understand that, not giving in to the chaos of the world. But really, how do we not do that? I mean, if you look around us, the chaos of this world is real. We have real things like hurricanes, real things like earthquakes, real pandemics like the COVID-19 pandemic. These are all very real situations, and how are people supposed to remain focused on God at a time when so much of this chaos is swirling around them, much like the storm and the waves were swirling around that little boat a few minutes ago out here on the sea?
The thing is, in the midst of the chaos, the storm of the world around us, if we can focus on God, there is this calm, this peace, this sense that all is right with God and with us. Now, in this place of peace, under God's rule, we live a bit differently than those who are living in the outer world of chaos. God's rules about living, we might say, are a bit unconventional and outside the box.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Thomas, for instance, in first century Palestine, the rule was love your neighbors and hate your enemies. But what does Jesus say under God's rule? Jesus says, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Or another instance, the scribes and the Pharisees did not pollute themselves by eating or drinking with the wrong sort of people. But Jesus, in the place of God's rule, says, consider it an honor to be called a friend of tax collectors and sinners. In the chaotic world, a crowd of over 5,000 people who are hungry cannot be satisfied with 5 loaves and 2 fish. But in Jesus' world, where God's power rules, all of them eat and are filled, and they wind up with 12 baskets of leftovers. See what I mean? The bottom line of the world under God's rule, the world where God's order reigns, is a world where God's love is extended to all. And this includes looking after their physical, mental, and spiritual sides.
Okay, but how do we remain focused on God's rule, on God's order, so that we don't get overwhelmed by the storm of chaos around us?
Well, the key, Thomas, is focus. Focus on God. Focus on Jesus. Focus on the Bible. Focus on love. To keep up that focus, you need stuff, like prayer, looking after yourself, surrounding yourself with people who also focus on God, stuff like that. Everyone is a bit different, so you need to know what it is that you need to do to focus on God.
And this will make a difference.
Yes, focus on God, and there really is divine, miraculous help for your big and your small problems. And life is more enjoyable too. Let us pray. God, help each of us to do whatever we need to do to focus on you, so that we might live under your rule in your place of healing, light, security, peace, hope, joy, and incredible love. Help each of us to take the time we need to figure out what we need to do to keep our focus on you, God. Amen.